In this video, we're going to take a look at section 5.3, which is division of polynomials. Now, our first objective is dividing by a monomial. Now, remember, a monomial, it's a polynomial with just one term. So we're going to be dividing by one term with our first objective. Now, in order to divide a polynomial by a monomial, you're going to divide each term in the polynomial by the monomial. Let's take a look at an example. So divide, we have 36 x to the 8th, y to the 15th, all over negative 4 x to the 3rd, y to the 10th. So in this case, we're dividing a monomial by monomial. So essentially what we're doing here is just really simplifying this fraction. Let's take a look at the coefficients first. With 36 and 4, a number that can go into both of these is 4. So 4 goes into 4 once, it goes into 36 9 times. Just a standard simplifying a fraction. And now when we're dealing with the variables, we have x to the 8th in the numerator and x to the 3rd in the denominator. When you're dealing with variables, what you could do is cancel out. So the 3 in the denominator are going to cancel out with 3 of them in the numerator, leaving me with just 5. Same thing with the y's. The 10 y's that are in the denominator cancel out with 10 of them that are in the numerator, leaving me with just 5. And now let's rewrite our answer. Okay, so in the numerator I have left 9x to the 5th, y to the 5th, and in the denominator I just have negative 1. But this could be further simplified because 9x to the 5th, y to the 5th divided by negative 1 just gives us negative 9x to the 5th, y to the 5th. And then we're finished. Take a look at a different problem. This time we have a trinomial divided by a monomial. So we have these 3 terms divided by this one term. So we have x to the 3rd plus 16x squared plus 6x divided by 2x. So remember, our rule told us, so whenever we're dividing by one term, whenever we're dividing by a monomial, divide each term in the polynomial by that monomial. So what I'm going to do is rewrite the problem. So I have x to the 3rd divided by 2x plus 16x squared divided by 2x plus 6x divided by 2x. So notice each term in the numerator, I'm dividing it by the denominator. I'm dividing by that one term, 2x. And now we just have 3 separate fractions to simplify. Okay. Well, for the first fraction, one of the x's cancel out with one of them in the numerator, leaving me with 2. Next fraction, I could simplify the coefficients. 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 16 8 times. And also this x cancels out with one of the x's in the numerator. And then our last fraction, 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 6 3 times. And for these, both x's cancel out. Now let's rewrite our result. So we have, from the first fraction, we have x squared over 2. Then I have plus. For the second fraction, all I'm left with is 8x divided by 1, which is just 8x. And I have plus 3 over 1, which is just 3. And now I'm finished. But notice I divided each term in the numerator by that one term in the denominator. Okay, next one. So divide, we have x to the 4th, y to the 3rd, plus 10x cubed, y to the 2nd, plus 16x to the 2nd, y, divided by 2x squared y. So notice, we're dividing by one term. We're dividing by a monomial. Okay, let me go ahead and rewrite this problem. So it's very similar to the previous problems that we did. So this is really x to the 4th, y to the 3rd, plus 10x to the 3rd, y to the 2nd, plus 16x to the 2nd, y, divided by 2x squared y. Now I'm going to divide each term in the polynomial by that monomial. So I have x to the 4th, y cubed, divided by 2x squared y, plus 10x to the 3rd, y to the 2nd, divided by 2x squared y, plus 16x squared y divided by 2x squared y. So we have three separate fractions. Let's go ahead and simplify. So the 2x's in the denominator cancel out with 2 in the numerator, leaving me with just 2. The y in the denominator cancels out with one of the y's in the numerator, leaving me with 2 y's left over. The next fraction, 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 10 5 times. The 2x's in the denominator cancel out with 2 of them in the numerator, leaving me with just 1. The 1y cancels out with 1y, leaving me with just 1y in the numerator. And for our last fraction, 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 16 8 times. X squareds cancel out, and then y's also cancel out. And now let's rewrite our solution. So we have x squared, y squared over 2 plus 5x to the first, y to the first, and then plus 8. And now we have our solution. Okay. So for these three examples, we are just dividing by a monomial, divided by one term. So whenever you're dividing by one term, divide each term in the numerator by that one term in the denominator. Let's take a look at our next objective. Now we're going to be dividing a polynomial that is not a monomial, dividing by a polynomial that is not a monomial. Now in these situations, you have to use a process called long division. And now let's use long division on this basic problem. 562 divided by 3. So we have 562, so let's recall the steps for long division. 562 divided by 3. And let's go through the steps. So first you would want to check, okay, how many times does 3 go into 5? But now instead of asking you that question, I'm going to ask you a different one to help us with the next problems that we're going to go over. What can we multiply 3 by to get as close as we can to 5 without going over? Okay. So in this case it would be 1. So after you figure out how many times 3 goes into 5, okay, we got 1. Now the next step with long division is to multiply. So now 1 times 3, I get 3. And now we go ahead and subtract. Okay. So 5 minus 3, we get 2. After you subtract, the next step is to bring down the next number. And now you repeat the process. So now, what's the largest number we can multiply 3 by to get close to 26 without going over it? In this case, we'd have 8. Now we go ahead and multiply 3 with 8. We get 24. And now we subtract. We get 2. And now you repeat the process. Bring down the next number. Okay. And now you want to check what's the largest number we can multiply 3 by to get close to 22 without going over. In this case, it would be 7. So now 3 times 7, I get 21. And now let's subtract. So 22 minus 21, I get 1. And now notice we don't have any other numbers to bring down. So this 1 is our remainder. Now the way that you write your remainder, it would be whatever the remainder was over whatever you were dividing by. So our answer here is 187 and 1/3. So that's just a basic problem from basic math. But we're going to be using these same steps with these next problems when we're dividing polynomials. Okay. Next example. So divide, we have x squared plus 3x minus 10 divided by x minus 2. Now notice I'm no longer dividing by a monomial. I'm dividing by a binomial, dividing by 2 terms. So since I'm divided by 2 terms here, I have to use the long division process. Whatever you're dividing by goes on the outside of our long division bar. And then whatever you're dividing goes on the inside. So x squared plus 3x minus 10 goes on the inside. Okay. Now let's go ahead and use the long division process. First, you want to check what can I multiply x by in order to get x squared. So in order for me to get x squared, I'd have to multiply x by x. Okay. And then make sure you just line these up correctly. So I'm putting my x above the 3x because the exponents for each one of these is 1. So I'm just making sure I line them up. So now after you figure out what you multiply x by to get x squared, you put that number on the top, and now you're going to actually multiply. So x times x gives me x squared, and now x times negative 2, I get negative 2x. Remember, the next step was to subtract. But be careful here because you're subtracting this whole binomial. So now I have x squared minus x squared. That cancels out, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want to happen. And then I have 3x minus negative 2x. Be careful here because that minus minus changes into plus. So what I have is 3x plus 2x, which gives me 5x. After you subtract, bring down the next term, bring down the next number. And now you repeat the process. So now let's go ahead and check, what do I have to multiply x by to get 5x? Well, I know I have to multiply it by positive 5. So I'm going to put plus 5, and now I'm going to multiply. So 5 times x minus 2, this gives me 5x minus 10. And now we go ahead and subtract. Okay. So 5x minus 5x cancels out, which is perfect. Negative 10 minus negative 10. So remember that minus minus changes into plus. So I have negative 10 plus 10, which gives me 0. Notice I don't have any other numbers to bring down. So this x plus 5 is my solution. One other thing I wanted to mention. So I don't have any other numbers to bring down, and we end up with 0. This is our remainder. 0 is our remainder. So we don't actually have a remainder. So our final answer is just x plus 5. Let's take a look at another problem. So divide, we have 2x to the 4th plus 3x cubed minus x squared minus 7x plus 9 divided by x plus 4. So notice what we're dividing by is a binomial. It's not a monomial. So we're dividing by two terms. So we have to use the long division process. So x plus 4 is going to go on the outside. Now the inside I have 2x to the 4th plus 3x squared, plus 3x cubed minus x squared minus 7x plus 9. So first, I have to figure out what do I have to multiply x by to get 2x to the 4th. I have to multiply by 2x cubed. And notice the 2x cubed, I put it above the 3x cubed. Now let's go ahead and multiply. So 2x cubed, so I'm multiplying 2x cubed with this whole x plus 4. So 2x cubed times x plus 4, I get 2x to the 4th plus 8x cubed. And now we're going to subtract. Okay, so now let's go ahead and subtract. 2x to the 4th minus 2x to the 4th cancels out. Perfect. 3x cubed minus 8x cubed, I get negative 5x cubed. And now after you subtract, bring down the next term. So let's bring down this negative x squared. And now we repeat the process. Okay? So you have to check what can I multiply x by to get negative 5x cubed. Okay? We'll have to multiply by negative 5x squared. Now let's go ahead and multiply it out. So negative 5x squared times x plus 4, I get negative 5x cubed minus 20x squared. And now we subtract. So negative 5x cubed minus negative 5x cubed. Remember, once again, that minus minus changes into plus. So we really have negative 5x cubed plus 5x cubed. cancels out. Negative x squared minus negative 20x squared. Once again, the minus changes to plus. So we have negative x squared plus 20x squared, which gives me 19x squared. After we subtract, bring down the next term. And repeat the process. What do I have to multiply x by to get 19x squared? I have to multiply it by 19x. Now let's go ahead and actually multiply that out. Okay, so 19x times x, I get 19x squared. 19x times 4. Okay, what is that going to give me? 76x, positive 76x. And now let's go ahead and subtract. Okay, 19x squared minus 19x squared cancels out. Negative 7x minus 76x, that gives me negative 83x. Okay. Now we still have one more term to bring down. Let's go ahead and bring that down. Now repeat the process again. Okay, what do we have to multiply x by to get negative 83x? Well, we have to multiply it by negative 83. Okay, let's go ahead and multiply. So negative 83 times x, I get negative 83x. Negative 83 times 4. Okay, let's see what that's going to give us. Okay, that gives us 332, negative 332. Now let's subtract. Okay, so negative 83x minus negative 83x, that minus changes into plus. So that cancels out. Negative 83x plus 83x cancels out. 9 minus negative 332. So that minus changes into plus. So I have 9 plus 332, which gives me 341. Now notice I don't have any other terms to bring down over here. Okay, so this 341, this is my remainder. So remember, we put our remainder over whatever we were dividing by. So we have 341 over x plus 4. Now, what makes this a little bit more different, a little bit different than the basic long division problem we saw? When we have a remainder, we're going to have to put a plus right here. So we have plus and then 341 over x plus 4. If your remainder was negative, if your remainder was, say, negative 341, instead of that plus sign, you would have a minus sign there. So it was kind of a long process. Just make sure to follow the steps. And another thing to be careful with, when you have the minuses, so when you're subtracting, like in this case right here, remember that changes into plus. So our final solution, we have 2x cubed minus 5x squared. So 2x cubed minus 5x squared plus 19x minus 83 plus 341 over x plus 4. And this was our final solution. Let's take a look at another problem. So divide, we have 9y to the 4th plus 14y squared minus 8 divided by 3y plus 2. So now remember, whatever you're dividing by goes on the outside. So we have 3y plus 2 on the outside. And now for this particular problem, there's a trick that you need to use. So notice how we go from y to the 4th to just y to the 2nd. We're missing a y to the 3rd term. And then also notice how we go from y squared to just 8. So there's no like y to the 1st power. So what we're going to do is fill those in with placeholders. So I have 9y to the 4th plus, I'm going to put 0y cubed as a placeholder there. I have plus 14y squared. I have plus 0y, so that's another placeholder, and then minus 8. These placeholders are useful so that way you don't get confused with what you're subtracting. Okay. So now let's go over the steps. First, I have to figure out what do I have to multiply 3y by to get 9y to the fourth. I have to multiply it by 3y cubed. Now let's go ahead and multiply. So 3y cubed times 3y, that gives me 9y to the fourth. 3y cubed times 2, I get 6y cubed. I'm going to subtract. Okay, 9y to the fourth minus 9y to the fourth cancels out. So this is the reason why we have this placeholder, is now I have something to subtract from. So 0y cubed minus 6y cubed, that gives me negative 6y cubed. And now we could go ahead and bring down the next term. And now let's repeat the process. So what do I have to multiply 3y by to get negative 6y cubed? We'll have to multiply it by negative 2y to the second. So let's go ahead and multiply. Negative 2y to the second times 3y, that gives me negative 6y cubed. Negative 2y to the second times 2, I get negative 4y squared. Now let's subtract. So negative 6y cubed minus negative 6y cubed. Okay, well that minus changes into plus. So I have negative 6y cubed plus 6y cubed, which cancels out. And now 14y squared minus negative 4y squared. So that minus changes into plus. So I really have 14y squared plus 4y squared, which gives me 18y squared. Let's bring down the next term, bring down this 0y. Repeat the process. I have to multiply 3y by 6y in order to get 18y squared. So let's go ahead and multiply. So 6y times 3y, I get 18y squared. 6y times 2, I get 12y. Now let's subtract. So the 18y squared minus 18y squared cancels out. 0y minus 12y, that gives me negative 12y. Now let's bring down that last term, bring down the negative 8. And now repeat the process. Okay, what do we have to multiply 3y by to get negative 12y? We'll have to multiply by negative 4. So let's go ahead and multiply it out. So negative 4 times 3y, I get negative 12y. Negative 4 times 8, negative 4 times 2, I get negative 8. Now let's subtract. So negative 12y minus negative 12y, that minus changes into plus. So negative 12y plus 12y cancels out. And then I have negative 8 minus negative 8. Well, that minus again changes into plus. So I have negative 8 plus 8, which gives me 0. So now I don't have any other numbers to bring down. This 0 is our remainder. So our final answer here, we have 3y cubed minus 2y squared plus 6y minus 4. Let's take a look at one last problem. So divide, we have y cubed minus 11y squared plus 6 divided by y squared minus 3. So remember, whatever you're dividing by goes on the outside. But notice we're missing a y term. You see how it goes from just y squared to just 3? There's no y to the first power. So let's put a placeholder there. Let's put plus 0y and then minus 3. And now in the numerator, okay, we're also missing that y term. We go from y to the second to just no y's. So let's put a placeholder there as well. So we have y cubed minus 11y squared plus 0y and plus 6. Okay. Now we have to check, what do we multiply y squared by to get y? Well, we have to multiply it by y. So I'm going to put my y underneath or above my other y term. Okay. So now let's go ahead and multiply. So y times y squared, I get y cubed. Y times 0y, I'm going to put this as 0y squared. And now y times negative 3, I get negative 3y. And now let's go ahead and subtract. Okay, so y cubed minus y cubed cancels out. Negative 11y squared minus 0y squared, That gives me negative 11y squared. 0y minus negative 3y. So that minus minus changed into plus. So I have 0y plus 3y, which gives me 3y. And then after we subtract, bring down the next term, and repeat the process. So what do I have to multiply y squared by to get negative 11y squared? I have to multiply by negative 11. And now let's go ahead and multiply it out. So negative 11 times y squared, I get negative 11y squared. Negative 11 times 0y, okay, that just gives me 0y. Negative 11 times negative 3 gives me positive 33. Now let's go ahead and subtract. Okay, so the negative 11y squared minus negative 11y squared. Once again, that minus minus changed to plus, cancels out. 3y minus 0y gives me 3y. 6 minus 33, I get minus 27. Now notice we don't have any other terms to bring down. So this 3y minus 27, this is my remainder. So I'm going to write my remainder as plus. I have 3y minus 27 all over what we were dividing by, which is y squared minus 3. Okay, so let me rewrite it down here. So we have y minus 11 plus 3y minus 27 all over y squared minus 3. And this is our final answer. All right, so that was it for section 5.3. If you have any questions, don't hesitate, just email me and I'll help you out.